Food is fuel for your body, your mind, and definitely your sport. But let's face it, nutrition is confusing, and the expectations on girls and women to be thin and have a six-pack are exhausting. If you've ever been frustrated with your body, confused about nutrition, obsessed with eating healthy, or guilty when you don't, underate, overate, or overtrained, and overwhelmed with all the pressure, then this podcast is for you. Nutrition can be easy. You can take control of it, but it might start with letting go of control by asking for help and making a change. I'm Lindsey Cortez, sports dietitian and owner of Riise Up Nutrition, where I empower female athletes to overcome nutrition concerns and perform at their highest level, to stop being confused by all the mixed or harmful messages, and finally have confidence in your body as a fierce, fit, and fueled female athlete. Today's episode is sponsored by Inside Tracker and supported by Orgain and Practice Better. Stay tuned to hear more about these amazing companies that I'm partnered with. But for now, let's get to the conversation. Hello, fans. It's Lindsey Cortez, your host of the podcast, sports dietitian and owner of Riise Up Nutrition. I shared with you a few episodes back, actually, maybe it was like 2 months ago now, that I just wanted to be a little more proactive on doing some solo episodes. We have so many amazing guests, but I wanted to do a few more. And with that being said as well, I want to incorporate my partner in crime, Jenna Stranzl, also registered dietitian and our lead nutrition coach here at Riise Up Nutrition. Jenna's been on the podcast before, and I just want to incorporate her a little bit more because she has a lot of awesome experience and expertise to share with you as listeners. So Jenna, welcome back to the podcast.
I'm glad to be back. Thank you for having me on.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And this will become a new regular thing. You know, it's funny to me because I talk with you almost every day and we have so many food conversations. So it's funny to me that maybe our listeners in this community don't know you as well. So I think it's really important because you're so a part of you're so a part of Riise Up Nutrition. And I see the podcast as an extension of that. And yet people who aren't clients of Riise Up Nutrition don't know you so much. So it's very important that we get your voice out there a little bit more.
Sounds good. But all the other things that y'all talk about on a week-to-week basis, that's also important too. So
It is. Yeah. So what we wanted to share with you listeners today, I work a lot with athletes, obviously with disordered eating or nutrition struggles, and we're working to help them learn to use food as fuel to perform at their highest level in whatever their respective sport or movement might be. With that being said, I've spoken a lot about RED-S, relative energy deficiency in sport. I've spoken a lot about the topics of disordered eating, underfueling. But what hit me is that I haven't had a formal podcast episode since episode number 2 was
a while ago.
Was what is RED-S? Yeah, episode number 2 was what is RED-S? And I don't know what episode we're at when this releases, but we're over 100. So episode number 2, I would strongly encourage listeners to go back and listen to what is RED-S. I also early on had an episode about what's the difference between eating disorder and disordered eating. I actually think that was episode number 5. It was eating disorders and it was to exercise or not to exercise. And I kind of talk about well, this kind of depends, are we disordered eating? Are we eating disorder? So yeah, I think some of those early on episodes are really good for listeners to go back to and listen for some of the fundamental, whether it be definitions, explanations, and also I think some core principles of Riise Up Nutrition and things that we teach and educate our clients on too. Yeah, but here we are 2 years later, let's do an updated one. So that's why Jenna's here to help me out today.
Yeah.
So part 1 of this episode and conversation with myself and Jenna will be a little bit of definitions and our experience and expertise as dietitians in working within these conditions and spaces. And then part 2 will be us sharing our personal journeys with said conditions and things like that. So we're going to kick this off, Jenna, with a definition, and I'll start and then let you elaborate on it. So I first just kind of want to define RED-S, which is RED-S. It stands for relative energy deficiency in sport. This is not a new thing, but it is a new term. It was just in 2015 that the International Olympic Committee published an extensive review article and sort of named this condition. At that time, they sort of called it like an update to the Female Athlete Triad. So the Female Athlete Triad, which has been more well known for almost 30 years now, is the condition where female athletes might be not eating enough energy for what they need to perform and function in their sport and in life. So there's underfueling going on. And then they see missing menstrual cycle or disrupted hormones because of that. And then the third part of the triad is altered bone health, maybe even osteoporosis or osteopenia affecting that. So that's the female athlete triad. And RED-S is, those three things are part of RED-S. But in 2015, our newest research really figured out like, well, there's more than just these three things. And also it's not just specific to females. Okay. So the suppression of hormones can happen in males as well. Maybe it's not the missing menstrual cycle, but they can still have suppressed hormones, testosterone, insulin like growth factor, our hunger fullness hormones can be off. Also, there's other things besides just the bone health and the hormone health. So RED-S really highlights that we start to have gastrointestinal disruptions where our digestion and our microbiome is affected. Our brain neurologically starts to be affected, which then affects us psychologically with our mood, whether it be depression or increased irritability. We also, because we are underfueled, which is part of RED-S, is the core of it is lacking enough energy compared to all the things your body wants to do. We're seeing disruptions in how our muscle functions. So one, as an athlete, it's not adapting to your training, whether it's to the standard that you should be, that your coach expects, that your teammates maybe should be. And sometimes it's a big unknown of like, well, what is my potential? I'm just not reaching it, you know? And then that muscle not adapting, it could be actual muscle loss. It can be longer recovery times, more soreness. This can be on a biological level, more inflammation, higher cortisol levels. It can be from an injury level, chronic injuries, not healing, more tendinitis, more inflammation. Can be a lack of coordination and like, you know, just like tripping and falling more often, things like that. So it really broadens. RED-S really, I don't want to say broaden in a way that makes it more loose, but I think it's actually more all inclusive of so many ways that your body can be affected. And so to kind of continue with this definition, I want to go back to like, so what is it? Like, how do you know it's if your body doesn't have enough energy relative to what you need to perform in your sport and life. And this kind of makes you think differently than the classic way of thinking about nutrition, where it's like calories in should equal calories out. Well, as an athlete, your calories out, and I don't even like the word calories. Let's say energy. Okay. Mm-hmm. Energy in equals energy out is like this energy balance equation that many people are familiar with. But as an athlete, your energy out is one, very, very high. You're doing a lot of energy expenditure with physical movement. And two, that's what your body prioritizes. So even though you might be running recreationally, even though your basketball game, you know, you're competitive, but at the end of the day, like, okay, it's just a game, right? It's not life or death. Well, the cells of your body don't know that. Okay. When you're running, when you're moving, the adrenaline, the epinephrine in your body, like it biologically doesn't know the difference between I'm playing a basketball game and hope I win and I'm running away from a bear that's about to kill me right now. What's going on with your body saying my muscles need energy right now to get through this is essentially very, very similar. And so what that means is your body is going to take whatever energy you have and it's going to prioritize that run, that game, that lift, whatever you're doing. It's going to say, I need to put all my energy towards that. So if you aren't eating enough in total, it's like whatever I am eating, it's going towards sport. The question is there enough left over to support all the other things that I do as a human being? as a human being, my brain needs energy to think clearly. My bones need energy to be strong. My stomach needs energy to make digestive enzymes. My pancreas needs energy to create insulin. My hair needs energy to grow, right? Like we need things. We need energy inside our body. The point of eating energy isn't to expend it all. We need to keep some energy inside our body because there are internal functions that our body needs to do. And so that's really the core of what is RED-S. It's when I'm sure I'm eating, but if all the energy that you're eating is going towards your sport, because your body prioritizes that, the big question is there enough left over for everything else? And if there's not, then you are in a state of energy deficiency. Again, you might still be eating a lot compared to your sister, your friend, but it's like, but compared to you and what you're doing relative to your sport, is it enough for your body to maintain good health internally? And if it's not, and you're in that state of RED-S, that's where you start to see all those internal health disruptions of my stomach's not digesting food anymore. My hair is falling out. I'm irritable. My DEXA scan bone density dropped a little bit. I'm getting injured. I'm not responding to my training very well. And all of that increases. So that was a very long definition. I hope it made sense. Is there anything you would add to that, Jenna? or elaborate on?
Yeah. So one, it's great that we have this more broad, and we needed that because, and I think still today we're in that transition phase of the triad versus like, there's nothing really that concerning going on, right? So you either fit into this box of these three things to check off of the triad. And now we are learning that it is not just these three things. And I think that creates also a sense of relief for female athletes and male athletes that may feel that like my body just isn't working, right? So, and we'll talk about our personal stories in a bit. And I think that I fell into that. And it's almost, I wish I knew years before that that's what my body was dealing with, like the soreness, the inflammation. And it put you in that zone of further damaging your body of like trying to get it back to where it once was. But I'm glad that we have more of a broader, or that wheel is bigger, immunological and GI, the microbiome and cardiovascular issues that we're dealing with, to also.
I forgot to mention cardiovascular. Yeah. That's another symptom.
And it's not just, you don't have to be underweight anymore. You don't have to fit into this certain box.
Right.
It can happen at any weight, any height, any age, male or female. And I think that I'm just glad we're in this space now in sports performance and sports medicine that we're able to help people figure this out.
Yeah, you brought up a few really good things there. First, how you were mentioning it. Like, I think that's the issue with Female Athlete Triad. It's not that was a wrong diagnosis. It helped many people for many years, but it's not just that, this can happen to men too. I think even the term athlete, female athlete, some people were then like, okay, so if I'm a 35-year-old recreational runner, maybe I don't call myself an athlete. Like, I can't have female athlete triad, and it's like, no, you can. And I know that RED-S still has the word sport in there. I think that's a little more inclusive, but even still, like, I don't want people to think this is sport like basketball, tennis. Like, you can be an adventure seeker. You can be a hiker. Like that term sport is really more, I think, the intentional exercise, intentional movement, but it doesn't have to be like, I'm an athlete, I have a game every week type of thing. So yeah, any age. I mean, in our experiences at Riise Up Nutrition here, we do work with a majority high school and college athlete. I need to look up these numbers, Jenna, but I always say it's around like 65% high school, college. And then like 35% is, we've had women in their 50s in this program, in their 30s, in their late 20s, in their 40s. We have had menopause and post-menopause, perimenopause athletes in this program and struggling. One of our clients over the past 2 years actually came to us because she was like, well, I've been missing my hormones. And she was like, I don't know if it's from RED-S and underfueling, or from this is just that stage in my life, not knowing if she was in perimenopause. And actually it was underfueling and it was RED-S, because in working together, she restored her period, and that's helping her health in these next few years until she does approach that stage in her life, right? So that was huge working with her.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, any age, any sex, any sport or definition of that for you. And I think the other thing you brought up, Jenna, was how, with the Female Athlete Triad diagnosis, it was like these 3 boxes, and they evolved. The Female Athlete Triad evolved. They used to literally specifically say like one of the triad pieces was anorexia. And then they started to say, okay, no, it's not that. It's just if you're not eating enough, right? And because weight was tied into that, and so, but that was back in like the 90s. They updated it. So yes, this can happen at any body size, any weight. The other thing too is I really appreciate the movement over the past 5 or so years of empowering girls and women with their menstrual cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important to educate us on it, because God knows I didn't know anything about my menstrual cycle growing up, or when I was lacking it, I just kind of ignored that. So I really appreciate the conversations about the importance of a menstrual cycle. But what I want people to hear me loud and clearly with is, even if you have a normal menstrual cycle, you could still be struggling with RED-S, right? Because there's all those other symptoms. There's the cardiovascular, there's the performance, there's the GI stuff. And so again, with the Female Athlete Triad, there only being those 3 boxes. And it's like, if 1 out of 3 of them was fine, then you didn't take it as seriously. But it's like, no, with RED-S, any one of these concerns is a reason to look into, am I fueling appropriately?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think also the notion of bringing men into the conversation was really important, because, and I'm thinking in past experience with a cross country collegiate team working with, it was just like, the guys are quote unquote tiny, they're small, and they're not, but we didn't understand that there was testosterone issues going on, and it's not just, that's just the way they're made, and they're made to be small and be low body fat. That's not how we should be handling it.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I think we were masking it even more for the men for a while, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is like a little public service announcement. I'm going to say right now, this is a Female Athlete Nutrition podcast, but if you are a male listening, first and foremost, I want you to know that we hope we've been helpful in educating you on just the importance of fueling your body. Also, don't hesitate to reach out to us. If you are of a different sex or gender and you're interested in help, you can give us a call, whether or not we are the ones to help you or to point you in the right direction. So there's my little PSA there.
Yeah.
I love my girls, but I love the boys too. Okay.
I think one of the great things too about the girls that we have in this program, and as you join, are you coachable, and can you be a mentor? I do think what's great about our girls is some of them have brought that educational piece to their teams.
Oh yeah.
And opening the conversation of girls that aren't just small have struggles too. Mm-hmm. And I'm here and I want to be heard. And I think that that's really powerful. And I'm really proud of them who have voiced that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sharing this information is so important, whether it be with your team or with your coaches. And, we'll see how this episode keeps going. This might be a really good one to share too. So as we just kind of defined RED-S, I threw out the word underfueling in there too, because I think at the core of RED-S is are you eating enough energy compared to what your body requires to keep up with sport and human life? And so if you're not eating enough energy compared to what you need, then you are underfueling compared to what you need. Actually, let me backtrack for a moment here too. Because I'm defining RED-S, but how do you diagnose it, right? And this is not because there are so many different things that it can affect. Sure, if you're missing your period, that could be RED-S, but also it could be pituitary lesion. It could be a tumor, which I don't think I've shared this on the podcast before, but I actually had a very rare ovarian tumor and I had to get it removed at age 17. And this was, I think I had RED-S going on at the same time, but like I also had something else affecting my menstrual cycle. And that was rare, but like there's other reasons, right? So it's not as simple as there's just this one thing that you can get diagnosed. But I think the diagnosis is looking at what are our symptoms. And then at the end of the day, this is where having a sports dietitian, you or me, we can look at those calculations. Calculations aren't perfect, but we can look at those calculations and say, well, this is what you're doing physically, and this is how much you're consuming. And there is a gap. And so it makes sense that we're having all of these symptoms, right? And so we can, I think as far as a diagnosis goes for RED-S, I would probably say a sports dietitian calculating your needs compared to what you're eating is really the way to do it. So it's not, and that's not easy.
No. And I that's, I think too, where it's helpful to not only just understand the calculations, but also the behaviors of that athlete or that individual. We often see more calories being consumed towards the end of the day, and then that limitation earlier on too. So it's also looking at the behaviors of where they're underfueling.
That's so important because there is new research to say specifically that underfueling during the daytime, or if you're underfueling for more than 4 hours at a time, how that affects hormones and gut health more severely. So it could, yeah, you're right. Those behaviors play a huge role in that. Like you could be like, no, I can't have RED-S. So, I'm eating, and these are hypothetical numbers, but I'm eating 3,000 calories a day and my workouts aren't that intense right now. Like that can't be possible. But it's like, well, if you're not fueling up appropriately before, during, or after training, then you could be in a state of underfueling for a certain period of time or during that sport exercise to where your body is being affected in a very similar way, even if you're eating enough later on. Yeah, it's nuanced, right? So,
it's also too, and I'm thinking of some clients that we've had is also just that outside movement of walking and on campus, or the elective, I'm just going to take a stroll. That is that effort on top of training.
Yep. So it's like, okay, this is what I'm doing for sport, but you got to tell me everything else you're doing. So are you sitting down the rest of the day? No. And this is why I think RED-S is I think as high school and college athletes, they're at risk of this because their lifestyles do have more movement, like walking around a campus. I went to the University of Massachusetts Amherst. It was a pretty big campus. Like it took me 20 minutes of walking from one class to another. And I mean, booking it because I was going to be late. Like I was moving during the day. Yeah. Senior year, I brought my bike to campus. I was like, I got to figure this out. Like I got to get to class faster in a more efficient way. So yeah, so there's a lot. And then I'm not saying people in a different age category don't do that either, but you could have a very physically demanding job. Many of our clients have had very physically demanding jobs. One of our clients worked in a furniture store and was like always like lifting heavy furniture and like moving it around. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm sitting at a computer for like multiple hours a day. You're like lifting things all day long. A lot of our clients are themselves coaches or personal trainers, like on their feet, coaching clients all day long. So yeah, there's a lot of things that as an athlete, we think of like, oh, training is when I'm in it. My heart rate's up. I'm sweating. But like you could be really doing a lot of movement and energy expenditure throughout your day that you don't think is a big deal, but actually is and is contributing to this RED-S problem. So I think I got sidetracked there, but that was good. So how diagnosis of RED-S, like it's not that simple. It's a combination of these things, and working with a sports dietitian will really help you get to the fundamental, I think, of like, are we taking in enough energy considering all these things, and then do our symptoms line up with that? And then so the term underfueling is part of that, right? It's part of the diagnosis of RED-S. But I think we can also say that word a little more casually. I know I have, I've had a meal or a day of underfueling or something like that. And so it's not this like diagnosis, but I think I kind of wanted to see if we could tease out what is the same and what is different between underfueling and RED-S. So underfueling is part of RED-S, but you can also underfuel and not supporting it, but you could underfuel and not have RED-S. right?
Yeah. You can underfuel it for short periods of time, right? Versus, or let's just say the difference between that unintentional underfueling of I'm now not walking an extra 3 to 4 miles a day on campus. And now I'm back on campus. Seasons picked up or pre-seasons picked up. I'm now also walking 4 miles a day on campus. And that's an underfueling if that starts to happen for 4 weeks at a time. And then, so underfueling can go up and down, short term, long term. You can underfuel for like a week, if you get sick. And is that damaging? Probably not if you bounce back. But if it's that consistent, okay, I started school, preseason started, now I'm walking, now I have classes, now I'm sometimes skipping meals because like the cafeteria and my classes don't line up. And now we're getting into the nitty gritty of the season. And now I'm getting into like cracking into midterms. And, then that's now underfueling.
Yeah. Okay. So this is I think you explained it really well. We've got the fact that within a short period of time, you could underfuel at a meal or a day, and it might not negatively affect you that meal that day or health-wise at all, because it's like, okay, maybe I did underfuel a little bit today, but tomorrow I slightly overfuel, and then the next day I fuel adequately. And this is actually very normal. And this is when we get into the conversation of like intuitive eating. That's actually very normal. Like how could you ever eat the exact amount of calories that you need every single day? You can't. I don't even know. Like, how many calories do I specifically need today? I don't know. And I'm a dietitian here and I don't know. Okay. Because I'm not hooked up to machines measuring my oxygen consumption and CO2 output every single minute of my day. So it would be impossible for me to know precisely how much I need today. And guess what? How much I need today is not necessarily how much I need tomorrow. And so we're using these estimations. And because of that, there's going to be some days where there is a little bit of underfueling and some days where there's a little bit of overfueling. Some days I am right spot on. And those are natural fluctuations that are very normal. So intuitive eating, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Underfueling in like a short period of time can happen and be something that your body is fully able to handle. Just like you don't need to do anything about it if it's in a short period of time. But what you were just describing, Jenna, is if underfueling, it wasn't just a meal, it turned into a week, and then a week turned into 4 weeks. And now we're starting to see those effects more. And so you described like the returning to college campus or season picking up, which is very, very common because we get busy. We don't have as much time to eat and we're moving more. And that's where chronic underfueling can lead to RED-S.
I was just thinking about something I came about when doing an analysis with one of our clients. I'm just pulling it up now because it's just reminding me of this conversation I had when doing something. Is that one day she was underfueled by 40%. And then another day she was underfueled by 92%. She was fueled at 92%. So
underfueled by 8% that time.
Underfueled by 8% versus underfueled by 40%. But I had calculated that if we had 2 underfueled days, like the one above, and 2 times a week for a year, you'd be lacking optimal fueling 30% of the year. Which when you then look at that,
that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yep. Yeah. So it's like, okay, I don't want people to stress out of like, I have to fuel with exactly what I need every single day, because I think that can create more stress. That takes you further away from being intuitive with your life, with hunger fullness cues. But yeah, if you have 30% of your life is underfueling by 40%, that's a big gap. So it's how much and how often is this happening? By how much and how often?
And I think that's important too about understanding your education or your awareness of nutrition. Like Nutrition 101 is, I really need to prioritize. It doesn't have to be stressful. I know that I should probably eat every 3 to 4 hours. Okay. What can I throw in my arsenal to eat every 3 to 4 hours? We can start as simple as that to avoid maybe that 30% underfueling.
Yeah. If we don't have fundamental nutrition behaviors, sometimes I call them like guardrails. Like guardrails in my life are, I always eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner and a couple snacks at least one, usually 2 or 3 every day. Like I cannot remember a day that I didn't have a snack. I really can't, right? So that's like, for me, and what keeps me healthy is like, that's normal, right? And that's where I'm probably not going to underfuel by 30, 40% one day because I have that guardrail in place, you know?
Just a plug though, we can help with that.
Oh yeah. We can help figure out where your boundaries are, what your guardrails are. Yeah. We can help teach you what your body needs or figure out what's going to work for you, right? Like, I don't know. I'm just hypothetically thinking if you have the type of job or schedule where like you can't snack, right? That actually happens a lot where people are in a medical field or working in a food factory where it's like, no, I can't eat other food when I'm in production of, you know, in this factory or something. It's like, okay, you can't get those snacks in. So how can we get enough energy in just with 3 square meals a day or something like that? So yeah, we can help you. We can help you figure all that out. Yeah, I think the underfueling too, the issue with underfueling is when it becomes chronic. Now, here's the tricky topic if you want to dive into this. I don't even know that I want to, but I know. We like doing outside the box things. We like that. Well, it's just that uncomfortable conversation because I don't like to promote weight loss. I don't think it's something that we all need to be thinking about half the time. I'm like, some of our clients need to be caring about weight gain. Most of our clients need to not care about weight at all. And I think as a society, I just wish there was less emphasis on it completely. But I don't want to be ignorant to the fact that some people may find an improvement in their life if they did lose weight.
I just,
what happened?
Sorry. I was trying to hydrate and
spilled your water. Go. I know. Well, that was perfect because it's like, oh, this topic about weight loss. Are we going here?
My water bottle's like, I don't know.
I don't want to be anti-weight loss if somebody chooses it themselves, first of all. This has to be, I want to, and then it has to be too appropriate, right? So just because you want to, if you're in a, BMI is 18, like it's not appropriate for you to, okay? Not that BMI is everything either. Oh God, I hate this conversation. Okay. But like, so if one, you want to, 2, it's appropriate, then some people might make lifestyle and health changes and nutrition changes that lead to weight loss. And this is why I bring this up is because it's like, well, how could somebody lose weight if they don't underfuel? So as much as we're like, you and I are coming from this place of the importance of fueling and like don't underfuel and chronic underfueling can lead to RED-S, I do understand that, yeah, if weight needs to come off, then you do need to, or if weight is going to come off, you will find yourself in a place where you're consuming less energy and or burning more energy than you previously were. So one thing I want to highlight here is you still need to give your body what it needs. Okay. So you should never underfuel compared to what your body needs. And this is why people who are in, let's say, larger bodies or who say, I've got visible excess fat on me, can actually experience RED-S because you underfueled to a point where you didn't give your body what it needed to maintain normal functioning metabolism, hormones, basic health. So the thing with weight loss would be I'm underfueling compared to before. Maybe you were overfueling before. Or maybe I'm not underfueling at all, but I am now burning more energy through more movement because before I wasn't burning much energy. And so, yes, there is a short period of time as you're going through this process that your body is adjusting to a different energy balance equation. I'm getting used to either less energy in or expending more energy. And that's why weight loss is happening. But you never want to underfuel to a point where you're not supporting your basic metabolic needs of making hormones, giving fuel to your muscles, giving energy to your brain, making sure you have enough energy to grow hair and all those other symptoms. And I've absolutely seen people of all weights and shapes and sizes have RED-S because it can happen to the population that feels the pressure of I need to lose weight. And I would never say the word need, but if they're feeling that pressure of I need to lose weight, and then they underfuel so drastically and for too long of a time. And this also happens. Sorry, I'll give you a chance to talk, I promise. But
No,
this also happens because sometimes they start underfueling. They do see that weight loss. They're motivated by it. And so they keep it going for longer, or they like kick it up a notch and they're like, well, if this worked in the past few weeks, what if I took it a little more extreme? And that's where it puts them into that category of now I'm really underfueling my body, or now I'm doing this for so long that my body never had a chance to like readjust its metabolism.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
It made sense. It made sense. And it's something that we deal with here. And I think that I love that the women recognize that I have put myself in a situation where I'm in really deep and I have to get out of this. And you said something to me on a voice note today. Lindsey and I communicate a lot with voice notes. And she said something to me and I wrote it down. And the quote was, what does health mean to you right now? And that's like when thinking about how to process this is like weight loss may have to be on the table, like off the table until we correct RED-S.
Yes. Yes.
And that's really important because health isn't always about like being thin, losing weight. It's about also like RED-S, for example.
Hey fans, I hope you are enjoying this conversation, but an important part of it is a word from our awesome sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Inside Tracker. Thanks to Inside Tracker, I've been able to catch iron deficiency and anemia on 2 different occasions in the past few years. And with this, I was able to kickstart my recovery to better fueling and workouts without having to coordinate doctor's appointments or wait around for my lab results. With Inside Tracker, I'm able to get my blood drawn whenever I want to and see everything that I want to. Personally, I get the Ultimate Plan a couple times a year to check up on my blood biomarkers and nutritional status. And thanks to Inside Tracker, I'm able to implement science-based nutrition and lifestyle recommendations immediately after results come in with their user-friendly online platform and personalized action plan. This is why I've been able to reverse iron deficiency so quickly, because my health is in my own hands when I'm using Inside Tracker. Created by leading scientists in aging, genetics, and biometrics, Inside Tracker analyzes your blood, DNA, and fitness tracking data to identify where you're optimized and where you're not. You'll get a daily action plan with personalized guidance on the right exercise, nutrition, and supplementation for your body. And when you connect Inside Tracker with your Fitbit or Garmin, you'll also unlock real-time recovery pro tips after you complete your workout. It's like having your own personal trainer and nutritionist in your pocket. For a limited time, you can get 20% off the entire Inside Tracker store by heading to insidetracker.com/riseup. There's a lot more that it can show you and that you can do with it besides just your iron. That's just my personal experiences. So again, head to insidetracker.com/riseup. That's RISEUP for 20% off. Back to the show. Yeah, I mean, yes. So even for that person that does say, well, I've got like, you know, I'm BMI wise in this category, or, you know, I've got, 20 pounds on me more than I did a few years ago when I was healthy a few years ago or whatever. But it's like, if you're currently in a state of RED-S, the weight loss isn't going to happen anyways because your hormones aren't working right. Your thyroid's not working.
Right.
Your stomach isn't digesting food appropriately. You're not extracting all the nutrients that you should be. And you're probably not thinking clearly either. And so we're continuing to just like think negatively, and like none of this is helping your health situation right now.
And I also will say that I'm going to say something that I don't know if it's going to ruffle someone's feathers, but sometimes it's not that, oh, well, you're just not logging your food properly, or that like you're not catching this and this and this. It's not that.
Yeah.
And to not feel that.
Yeah. Traditional diet culture will make you think you're still doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. Your behavior, you're not tracking every bite. You're not, really cutting out the ingredients you should or whatever, when it's like, no, actually, you need to balance your hormones first. Actually, you need to nourish your body. You need to make sure you're eating enough vitamins and minerals, because what do vitamins and minerals do? They're like the cofactors for every biological equation in your body, right? Like if you don't have thiamine, you're not utilizing carbohydrates appropriately. It's part of carbohydrate metabolism is thiamine. And so it's like, you got to be nourishing your body to support your metabolism so that later on, if weight loss is appropriate and possible for your body, then it could actually do it. But if you're in this chronically undernourished, underfueled RED-S category, it's just not going to happen, which is very difficult for people to understand. Yeah. It's difficult for me to explain. So I hope that I just helped explain it a little bit.
It's difficult. And you and I have talked about this before of going through our own personal journey. And I myself went through a moment in time where my weight ticked up more than I probably wanted it to, as a woman, and just seeing herself like gain weight, gasp, oh no. But eventually my body did go back to that set point.
Yeah.
But it takes time in order for your body to recover from RED-S.
It is the recovery process is a process. And I think that is important that those changes might be uncomfortable. Some of them are necessary. Some of them are appropriate and some of them are permanent, but some of them are not permanent. Okay. So whether it be, I did gain weight during this recovery process. Was some of that weight healthy? Maybe. Was some of that weight more than what your body, quote, needed? Maybe, but only time will tell. Really. And that sucks. I'm sorry. That's the sucky part. And we have to do a lot of reworking of our brain of what weight we think we should be. All of that. Oh gosh, this is why I hate talking about weight. I'm like, it's so tricky.
It's so tricky, but I don't know any woman anywhere in the entire planet that has never thought about weight.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think about it often, but I can't, obviously it comes up. I go to the doctor's office. Yeah. I don't know. It comes up. And then I think there's, just being in our field, I don't like the emphasis on weight. It's something we're trying to get away from, but it is ingrained in the nutrition field and in our coursework and stuff like that. And it takes a lot of unlearning.
I will say something right now where I probably sound like a total evil person, but if you met me,
we know that you're not.
I'm not, guys. If you met me 10 years ago, and if there was an exercise instructor, and if they did cycling classes 6 times a day, and I would look at her and I'm like, she's not super thin. I didn't understand. And that's also my naiveness to not understanding RED-S and not being aware, and also being a little inexperienced as a dietitian. But I had that mentality of I would have thought she would have been thinner because she exercises so much during the day.
Well, I personally appreciate your transparency in this. And I've certainly in my younger years, just as a human being, and then definitely in my career as a dietitian, definitely did and said things that I disagree with right now.
Absolutely.
And you are not alone in thinking that. And I hope that some of our listeners are yeah, I definitely have thought that too. Let's all be honest. Let's all be 100% honest. And this is why there's such a movement of disassociating health from body size, because that's not correct. Your old thinking, that wasn't correct, but it took so much unlearning from just society, from culture, from media, and then from the nutrition, health, and fitness field specifically that has associated body size to health. And it's just completely wrong. It's just not true. So yeah. Now, I think too, I really, wow, we've been talking for a while. So this is going to be a long episode. This is going to be a long episode. I like it. I hope our people are on a long commute or this is your long workout day or whatever that you're listening to this. Cause I want to get to our personal stories, but real quickly, I want to finish our definitions because then we have eating disorder and disordered eating. So let me just first start with eating disorder is a more clinical term. You can look in the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual of what are eating disorders. And actually we've talked about it plenty on this podcast, but just to name the types, the categories, we have anorexia nervosa, we have binge eating disorder, we have bulimia, we have OSFED, which is other specified feeding and eating disorder, which is kind of like, okay, it doesn't perfectly fit anorexia or bulimia or binge eating, but it's a combination or somewhere along or a little bit of everything. We also have avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. We haven't talked about this one much on this podcast at all, but so I'll just give a quick explanation. Avoidant restrictive food intake disorder could be that I am restricting my food and I am avoiding food. I'm not eating enough, but it's not stemming from the same reasons as anorexia, where anorexia is a fear of fat or a fear of food and a fear of calories. Our ARFID is more of like it could be a texture, it could be a consistency thing. Today's day and age, it could even be coinciding with medication use. Like there's a lot of ADHD medication, which then makes people really not hungry. And that feels really like wrong to eat. It can be psychological too, that it feels wrong to eat. And this is a really gross example, but I'm going to use it to try. I've never experienced ARFID. So but this is what I would, imagine is it's like, to me, it's a, turkey sandwich, but to that person, you just wrapped up a piece of dog poop and put it on a plate for me. Like that could be kind of what their brain is thinking. So of course they're going to not eat that. They're like, something is not working. So I haven't talked about that one too much, but there's also rumination disorder and unspecified feeding or eating disorders too, where again, kind of like the OSFED, it's somewhere along these lines, even though it might not be meeting certain specific diagnostic criteria. So those are eating disorders. And as you can see with lots of these, if you have an eating disorder, then you can easily be underfueling or in the category of RED-S. So they can absolutely be happening at the same time. And we do deal with some clients who they have RED-S because of an eating disorder, right? I also want to highlight that with eating disorder, there is binge eating disorder, and potentially also with bulimia, there's periods of binging and some periods of purging. And because of that, people think, well, that's overfueling. And so they don't put themselves in this category of being underfueled. But I would say that's not inherently true.
Right. Yeah.
With binge eating disorder, you might have a time period of overfueling, but there could be other times of underfueling or severe underfueling. And you can still have such metabolic disruptions because of these swings happening or these time periods of underfuel, overfuel, that you're still experiencing many of these symptoms of underfueling or RED-S as well. Yeah. And so they can coexist, but I think a differentiation here is that you also don't have to have an eating disorder in order to be underfueling or have RED-S. So much underfueling happens out of ignorance. I just didn't know. It happens accidentally, like you were describing earlier, Jenna, of like, oh, I just increased my training and I didn't realize I had to eat more because of that, And so RED-S and underfueling can happen very unintentionally, I just didn't know. Some people I love the intuitive eating movement, but sometimes our intuition doesn't help us eat what our body needs. So sometimes it's like, oh, I eat intuitively and suddenly I have RED-S. So they can coexist, but they do not have to.
Yeah.
So we're going to flip the script now and kind of share some of our personal stories. So my question to you, Jenna, which, if any, do you resonate with in your past? Because we know now you are fiercely fueled. You are fierce, fit, and fueled now. But in your past, did you resonate with RED-S, underfueling, eating disorder, disordered eating, which, oh shoot, I didn't define that one. Disordered eating is like, I engage in some behaviors and thoughts around food and body that maybe aren't the healthiest, even if it's not a clinically diagnosed eating disorder. And even if there are no clinical physical manifestations because of that. So disordered eating can certainly still be there. Okay. So which do you resonate with in your past?
I would say almost all the above.
Okay. Which one, go through your timeline then. Like which one did you recognize first, or did somebody else recognize in you?
Sure. So first was 10th grade, threw up and was like, this seems like an easy way to get rid of food, because I felt like I was called brute, and then like that threw me off. And so I was like, well, I can't be that because I don't like the way that made me feel in 10th grade. And I don't even like saying the word larger because I wasn't overweight, but I was just like at my highest weight that I remember, and it was called brute. And then I was like, well, that's not happening anymore. And so I just thought like, okay, if I let out the food easily, like quickly, then it won't stay in my body long. And then, I got caught by my mom, and then that scared me. So I was like, I can't do that anymore. So let's say a very short period of time, maybe like a few months of bulimia. And then she scared me because she was telling me that, like, you know, my heart's going to flutter, and she worked in colonoscopy, and would bring me home with blacked out of like colonoscopy actual visuals of patients. But the blacklet, you know, she didn't show me their names, and she'd show me colons of people who use like laxatives and things like that. And their colons were like black. And she's like, this is not the colon you want. And I'm like, okay. So I then just was dieting in the diet culture that existed in the late 90s of Oprah Winfrey and what she did and what mom did. And so with being in dance team, cheerleading, and cross country, track and field, I was just getting smaller and smaller, and I got compliments. And then that led to fast forward to diagnosis of anorexia, my end of freshman year of college. Mm-hmm. Recovered. And
so I think that dieting period was like a very disordered eating period.
Yeah.
And then as that continued, it led to an actual, okay, this is a diagnosable eating disorder now.
Yeah. And that's when I knew I knew that was something, you know, head was bigger than my body. My whole face was orange from toxicity of beta carotene by eating so many carrots and things. But I got through recovery, and I was like drinking the Kool-Aid, literally. And I think diet culture bit me in college a little bit later on. And that's when you start screwing around with, okay, well, maybe I could lose a little bit of weight, or maybe with my marathon training, I could modify my body a little bit more. And it just became RED-S. And I now know that because recovery was hard. My run sometimes just felt really stale and sore, even if it was 3 miles. I just felt inflamed. And I attest that to underfueling and going back to some bad habits that I once had.
You know, and you actually remind me of many of our clients. You know, I said like maybe like 30-40% of our clients are adults.
Yeah.
Okay. Not in high school and college, but many of them come to us saying, well, I did have an eating disorder in high school or in college, but like I don't anymore. But now I'm just like, I'm not recovering well, or like my menstrual cycle isn't perfect. And as we start working with them, I'm like, okay, no, this isn't diagnosed eating disorder like it was when you were 20, but you're still holding on to some weird behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Or thought processes from that time. Yeah, this is RED-S right now, but it's like the psychological component of it, of like behaviorally, or like thinking that, oh, like I should always eat carrots as a side with my sandwich, instead of like, how come you don't have some pretzels there from time to time? How come you don't have pasta salad as a side to your sandwich from time to time? And those are things that they're like, no, like that.
Yeah.
I just don't think that way. Right. And it's like, so anyways, I think your story is similar to many of our clients. That's like, okay, I'm recovered, but yet there's still something not fully clicking to give me truly optimal health, because I've still got this RED-S thing going on.
I think you also brought up something too, is like, well, why isn't this working as easy as it used to work? And then you even push harder to train, and we're over exercising. We're not taking the day off. We're trying to push our body more, and our body doesn't have anything to give.
Mm-hmm. This can definitely happen as we age. We're comparing to our younger selves, or like wanting to train how we used to. And that like, gosh, we thought we trained hard when we were younger. And like sometimes as we get older, we push ourselves even harder. And so that can be a little bit of a trap that some of us fall into.
The other thing too is I was diagnosed with ADD, ADHD in college. This was after my recovery from my eating disorder, and I was put on a medication. And the medication, my appetite was gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that screwed me up because, okay, I'm not hungry, so I'm not going to eat. And I would say with having a past eating disorder, no longer having hunger fullness cues, it just was a bad storm brewing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand then like how to handle nutrition. Even though I'm a nutrition major, I just had a lot of things put in front of me. I was training for marathons consistently.
Yeah.
On medication that didn't make me hungry, almost feeling good about not feeling hungry from my old eating disorder, saying like, that's a good thing. And so it was just like a lot of noise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you were, and I think to highlight how difficult recovery can be, that was hard on you to be, oh, I'm recovered. Let me jump into a marathon. Let me study nutrition. Like that, in all honesty, I would encourage people to give themselves more time and space before like jumping on to the next thing, whether it be physically or career-wise, academically. Like recovery takes a big toll. And sometimes we want to do that. We're like, okay, I'm better now. Let me move on with my life.
Yeah.
And yet those were things that may have held you back a little bit in really achieving like full recovery sooner, or full freedom or something like that.
I would say there's two things that I learned, is one more recent and one more a little bit like a while ago, is I'm not the right person to take ADHD medication. So I live without it and I figure out means of not using it. And that's because like of the past I had. I just don't want to deal with that. But that's my own personal journey that I've had with it and what it did to me.
Yeah.
I think it's still great. I think it's wonderful. But the other part is that like, Lindsey, I remember you saying one time is like, how you've created this 12-week program is like, of all the mistakes we've made, you've literally can put it in 12 weeks. And I wish that like I was able to learn in 12 weeks what I probably did in 12 years.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it definitely I think what I put into my the modules and educational piece that I teach my clients is that this 12-week program truly is probably a decade of learning from myself. And so I actually did realize, even though I just made a joke about this is going to be a really long episode, I actually have a client call coming up that I'm going to have to get to. So, yeah, podcast listeners, I love y'all, but I gotta move on to my clients. I've got 7 minutes. So so you shared like you kind of resonate with all the above and kind of the transition of it all. So I'll share some of my journey as I look back in hindsight. I don't know for a lot of my journey did I have RED-S? I don't really know. I will tell you this. I, generally speaking, was small growing up. Like I didn't even hit 5 feet tall until freshman year of high school. So I was just small. I was smaller than my siblings.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think like genetically I'm very average now, but anyways, growing up I was also very, very active.
Yeah.
I was super active. And so then I talk about things like our menstrual cycle. I was a very late bloomer. Or was it RED-S?
Yeah.
I don't know. I know that we don't know, right? I do know that, in conversations I've had with my mom and my sisters, I do have sisters. So to know that they got a normal time, but like 14, 15. But I was like 17 and a half. I was like 17 and a half. Yeah. So that was late. So I'm like, oh, was that RED-S? It very likely could have been, because that was very, very late. That is technically considered primary amenorrhea if you're over age 16 and haven't gotten a menstrual cycle yet. I was very active. I was a gymnast and then track and field. And I will say that I started being aware of nutrition and engaging in disordered eating behaviors, though I did not know it at the time, in high school. And I say, so it was intentional, but I didn't know it was bad, is what I'm saying. Like I started being aware of calories and counting calories, not because I was trying to be smaller, but because I was trying to be healthy. I thought that was the healthy thing to do. I thought, and this is no blame to my mother specifically, but like we had Slim Fast shakes in the house, and like I thought that was a meal because that's what it said on there.
It's a meal replacement.
The directions was right. Yeah. So like I thought innocently that was a healthy thing. So I was engaging in what I now call disordered eating behaviors. I just didn't know it was at the time. And then I did have that primary amenorrhea, but I also shared earlier in this call, I had an ovarian tumor. like a legit, like had a massive surgery. It was the size of a grapefruit, had to get it taken out, like stomach cut open. Like it was pretty intense for a 17-year-old. Right after that, I was put on birth control because there was this huge, like, whoa, what's going on with your ovaries? Like this huge thing, right? And I stayed on birth control for 8 years on the pill.
Wow. So
when I think like, did I have RED-S as a teenager? I've got this big question mark. I'm like, probably, maybe. I don't know. I definitely that's when some disordered eating behavior started, even though it started so innocently. Now transition now to college. That's where it was more intentional. Again, I was in complete denial that it was disordered, but it was a bit more intentional because the intention behind it was I always felt like I had to lose 5 pounds. I was always trying to lose those 5 pounds and I was always trying to make my diet perfect. It's weird though, because I'm like, I still at that time really thought like I was studying nutrition. Like I really thought I was doing the right thing. I did in college in my senior year when I was so frustrated that I never lost those 5 pounds and also then was injured, very broken and hurting and feeling more insecure. I don't know. Life was difficult to me at the time. I did engage in some purging activities. And so that, that you could classify as more of an eating disorder, right?
Yeah.
I never sought professional help for it and was able to stop that out of my own, self-guidance. I was able to stop that. So that didn't go on too long, but that was definitely more eating disorder behavior. And then I think that's when after that is when I really did find food freedom and balance and intuitive eating. But as life goes, we have our ups and downs, right? And was it all sunshine and rainbows after that? No, it wasn't. I then engaged in intentional, I'm going to call it underfueling right now. When I in grad school did like a figure show. And that was me as a competitor where basically I was a personal trainer at this gym and another personal trainer buddy of mine was a bodybuilder. And he was like, you should do a show. Like you could win it. And I was like, hell yeah, I can win it. And I was like, I got so competitive. I was just like, heck yes, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to I just wanted to win something. That was intentional. There was underfueling involved. I did engage once again in disordered eating behaviors, but I thought that I was in control of the situation the whole time. And though I was, and it was an experiment and it was a one-time thing, I did decide after doing the show that it actually wasn't in line with my core values of who I was and the person I wanted to portray to the world. So it was a one-time thing. I never stepped on a stage in one of those bikinis again, but it was a cool experience. I've had some figure competitor clients. So it's, I'll say just as far as resonating with some of those clients, I think having that experience, I have a little insight to that world.
Yeah.
But where I was going is I thought I was in control of that, but I struggled with some health effects afterwards that I would say, ooh, I was in RED-S after that. Because one of the things that happen when you do an aesthetic competition like that is it's kind of hard to just let it go afterwards. It's an aesthetic, it's a looks focused thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's you got on stage, you looked how you looked. It's you don't want to just 2 weeks later look totally different.
Yeah.
And so I kept up some of those habits that were supposed to be experimental, and I kept that up a little too long. And I transitioned that same year into training for a marathon. So you can see how this led to underfueling. And now my underfueling was chronic. Then I started having digestive issues. Then I thought, oh my God, I'm gluten intolerant. Because I wasn't digesting food well. I was having tons of issues. I also was having my heart rate was slower than it had ever been. I have a terrible, embarrassing story of passing out at work one time. So I, after that experience, got into the RED-S category. And as much as it was very, very difficult for me, an injury is what helped me heal. So I, after running the marathon, had this ankle injury. I think it was completely unrelated to RED-S. It wasn't a bone thing. I had, actually once again had another tumor, FYI. I'm your benign tumor girl. I've been lucky they've all been benign, but I've had many of them. So I had this benign bone tumor. So my bones were not weak. I was growing too many bones. And, I ended up having this injury that stopped me from running. And that is what ultimately helped me heal from RED-S is my exercise had to slow down, stop. And I did gain weight during that time. That was difficult to deal with, but it was part of my RED-S recovery process. So, in my story, what I want to share too is so much of this is in hindsight. I didn't have the term RED-S at the time.
Yep.
I certainly, and the people around me in high school would have never thought that was an eating disorder. I was just being air quote healthy, right? So but all of this was all part of my journey too.
I think that hindsight as well, I wish what I knew was when I felt the inflammation, when I felt like my gut health, feeling like my GI tract when I would go on long runs was awful, or when I just felt like I could never recover. So it was like, if I had a sore run, that meant that I just had to push my body harder the next day to make up for like this sucky run I had that day. So I even pushed harder. And I think it further put me down a spiral. And I wish somebody would have just like shook me and said like, this is RED-S. Like, this is, you're making it worse.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know that I was making it worse. I thought like the further I pushed myself or felt bad, like I just would make it eventually, like I'd get out of it.
I think too that this is where I think having a diagnosis or name is helpful, because then you have that path or an expectation at least. Because again, for me too, like when I did have to like stop all running and then I experienced some weight gain, like if I knew, I'm healing from RED-S, like this is kind of like part of the process, maybe that would have been easier to deal with. But instead I had these years of being like, well, how am I supposed to manage my weight if I'm not exercising at the level I want to anymore? And if I could have flipped the script in my head and realized like, this is not about your weight. This is about healing and nourishing and renourishing your body right now. That might have helped.
Yeah.
Because that went on for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say the important thing about that, like these journeys too, is like every step of the way, like I'm sure you can speak for yourself, but like you learn something different about the process. And like, many of our clients make an intentional decision to stop exercise to heal their body. And like mine was unintended. Mine was like forced. It's like because I'm injured. And many of our clients have that too. But even then, like when we're working with a client, it's like, if you're being forced to stop, like, can we express some gratitude for this situation? Now I have the time to heal these other important things.
Yeah.
And that's where like, for me, I didn't have any gratitude for the situation. I was just so upset about it.
So sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's eventually like how I broke up. That's why I broke up with marathon training. I was just like, I think this is causing me more chaos than joy anymore. And I think once I put it away for a while, that's when I started to feel better.
Yeah. When I did step
giving
away.
Giving my body the opportunity to.
Yeah. When I did step away, not only heal physically is when I also healed, I think a lot of like the mental, like the intuitive eating, the food freedom. I had that space to address that too. So when you stepped away from marathon training is when you were able to do more of that as well.
Yeah.
And then the good news of the story that I'm going to cut us off on because I got to end this recording, but would be that once you've learned all of that, then when you do get back into, I want to train for a race again or, you know, like that, wait, now I've learned from my past mistakes.
Yeah.
I've found how fueling freely and nourishing my body and not underfueling makes me feel good. Now I can apply this with training, with competition, with being an athlete. And then you're doing better than ever. And I've definitely experienced that. Like, I really, truly will say that, like, as an adult, I don't know, like, time for time. Like, if I had to go back to college and run 400 hurdles, I don't know that I'd actually be faster. But I will say that, like, I know that I have challenged and pushed myself and had, like, amazing runs and races and training runs that I definitely wasn't capable of when I was 23.
Yes.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hope when you recover. For athletics.
That's what I was just going to say. I was like through all of this and I feel like this should be a two-parter of like, okay, so how do you live your life now? But like, I think I just want people to know who feel struggle or have gut problems or feel like they're slow or a fish out of water. Like it does get better.
Oh yeah.
It gets better. So if you're feeling doubtful, like it might be hard, but on the other side, it does get better.
Yeah, current situation, I resonate with none of what we talked about today. I do not have an eating disorder. I do not have RED-S. I do not underfuel except for those moments accidentally like, oh crap, I, forgot to bring a snack with me and I didn't get back home quite on time. Like those short-term things. But I don't have RED-S, don't underfuel, don't have an eating disorder, and I do not participate in any disordered eating behaviors either because I know how toxic that can be. And so you can live a life where you're not doing any of this and where you are feeling good and fueled and performing. Yes, I wish listeners could see your face right now. You're like amped up.
I love saying like, you never have to diet ever again. You never have to work out to burn off calories ever again. Like just knowing that stress is not in our lives anymore is like, oh, this is nice.
So nice. Well, this was an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we'll do a part 2 of so we talked about our past, but part 2 of what does fueling fiercely look like? Yeah. What are our day-to-day? So we'll do that. We'll do that coming up. Stay tuned, listeners. Okay. I got to get going for this client call. Go. Thanks, Jenna.
You're welcome.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Fans, thank you so much for listening. But before you go, I don't want you to miss out on things that I know you need. First, if you need help overcoming nutrition concerns, perhaps something we talked about in this episode, look no further. You have your female athlete specialist in sports dietetics right here. So head to my website, www.riseupnutritionrun.com, and book a free call with me to learn more about how I may be able to help you. My flagship program, the Female Athlete System of Transformation, aka the Fast Track, helps female athletes overcome disordered eating and perform at their highest level. The life-changing transformations that we help clients with don't just happen by listening to podcasts. It happens by taking action with people who are guiding you to your goals, aka me. So call me, head to the website, www.riseupnutritionrun.com, and book it in. Take action, overcome your nutrition struggles as fast as possible. I am here to help. Second, don't forget about our amazing sponsors, Inside Tracker, insidetracker.com/riseup for 20% off. Also, we are supported by Orgain. If you are an athlete in need of a quick fueling option with clean, good ingredients, look no further than Orgain. I absolutely love their ready-to-drink whey-based shakes for post-workout on the go. As a listener of this podcast, enjoy 30% off your first order with the code RISEUP30. All caps, RISEUP30. Last, if you are a dietitian, coach, or health professional needing a platform to manage your business, coordinate with your clients, invoice, communicate, and more, look no further than Practice Better. Get a 14-day free trial and 20% off your first 4 months by clicking the link in the show notes and using the code RISEUP20. I've been using Practice Better for 4 years now to manage my business, and I promise it's the best way to manage your practice. Look, lady, since you are doing all of those things for you, my last request, if you're willing, is to do something for me. Please head over to our ratings and reviews, leave a 5-star rating, leave a positive review if you like this podcast, and please tell a friend about this amazing podcast or an episode that you think they need so that you and others around you can be fierce, fit, and fueled. Until next time, fuel fiercely.